Welcome to the second week of Lenten reflections on spiritual practices. Last week I spoke with you about fasting because I think that is a defining practice of this church season. This week I'm going to talk to you about almsgiving, something less commonly associated with the season and something that we might not even usually think of as a spiritual practice. I could have used many words for this. In addition to almsgiving, I could have said gifting or giving to the needy. I'm going to stick with almsgiving because I think that's the more precise word, if a little archaic sounding. The word almsgiving comes from an Old English word and means giving from one's own possessions to those less fortunate. Though our word is English, the idea is clearly scriptural. I'm going to read a passage to you that relates to this practice. This is from Matthew chapter 6. Jesus says, "So whenever you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." Something similar to what we saw last week on fasting is happening in this passage from Matthew. Jesus is, on the one hand, offering a warning about how this practice can go wrong or be abused. He suggests that giving alms can be an opportunity for pride and self-aggrandizing. On the other hand, Jesus expects his disciples to give. Jesus is assuming this is something his disciples will and should do. Matthew is not the only book of the Bible that mentions this practice. Similarly, the Apostle Paul, in several of his letters, mentions a collection he is making for what he calls the poor in Jerusalem. He's asking various churches from around the world to put their money together to provide relief to a population of needy people amongst the Christians in the city of Jerusalem. I love this because I think we can see in it an anticipation of the sort of thing Christians still do today. In fact, Paul's collection for the poor in Jerusalem parallels the money we're collecting for the people of Ukraine right now. Though far away, we're pooling our resources to help those we know are in need, those we can't physically get to ourselves. Now, I imagine some of us might be wondering what the justification is for almsgiving. Well, at the most general level, mercy or charity is a widely acknowledged and celebrated motivation. In other religions and in various ethical theories, giving from your excess to help those in need is celebrated and even expected. But there are some reasons specific to our faith. Here's a quote from Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. Paul writes, "For you know the generous act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich." We are following Jesus when we hold our wealth lightly and give it to others. You'll notice that what Paul is talking about is not just Jesus' ministry on earth. He's not just talking about discrete acts of giving. Indeed, if we're thinking about Jesus' life on earth, he never was rich. What Paul is talking about is the incarnation. The Son of God, rich in divinity, entered the relative poverty of our human condition. Almsgiving is something we practice to follow our Lord in the incarnation. But like all spiritual practices, this one isn't purely sacrificial. When we give to those in need, we don't just follow Jesus. We become like him as well. We are united to God in our almsgiving. So I invite you this Lent, if you aren't already practicing almsgiving, think through how you can make it part of your life. Use our offering to the people of Ukraine as an opportunity to begin. And if you are already giving, I invite you to begin seeing it in light of the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Don't think of this practice as cold, rigid duty, but as a habit that makes you and the world a little more like Christ.